Respected teachers and all my dear friends, my name is Archit Isham and today I am going to give a presentation on the topic History of Ancient Mathematics. First of all, let us look at the contents of this presentation. We will start off by talking about the history of mathematics and how it developed in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. After this, we will explore what number systems are and how their development and their history is very crucial for our understanding of mathematics in the modern world. Then we will look at the history of arithmetic and geometry and how they transformed from uh, forms of science which we used for counting daily objects to the highly evolved branch of mathematics which we know of them as today. Then we will look at the contributions of Hindu and Arabic civilization towards mathematics. This will be followed by the history of invention of negative numbers and zero and how they came into modern use. Then we will look at the development of algebra and finally the roots of equations. First of all, what classifies as ancient? Since the topic of this presentation is history of ancient mathematics, we must first ask ourselves what exactly is ancient. So, ac- according to Oxford Dictionary, in the large scale periodization used for Western history, ancient history can be defined as the time period from the distant past to say 5th or 6th century CE. In simpler terms, ancient can be simply defined as the time period from the beginning of human civilization to 5th or 6th century CE. So, how do we study ancient history? What are our sources which we use for studying ancient history? The sources which we use are material objects, images, and texts. These are found as ancient material objects which are transmitted by tradition. What is the condition on these sources and how do we interpret these sources? Wherever possible, we focus on reading and understanding the texts. This will sound very easy, but this is usually not so simple because these texts are usually written in dead languages and it is very difficult for cryptographers to decrypt these languages. Likewise, it is very difficult for mathematicians to understand these languages. When we study objects without any textual support or evidence, it is very easy to be misled or to have very open-ended and unverifiable interpretations. This is again because, as I said earlier, these texts are written in dead ancient Egyptian languages and it is very difficult for them to be studied without any modern reference. Now let us look at the culture of mathematics in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Egyptian and Babylonian mathematics. A handful of old Egyptian hieratic papyri, wooden tables, leather rules, a few handful of Middle Egyptian papyri, less than 100 Greek papyri were written in Egypt, forming a continuous tradition with the older material. First of all, let us look at what papyri is. Papyri, the singular form of which is papyrus. This is a material prepared in ancient Egypt from the pithy stem of a water plant, used in sheets throughout the ancient Mediterranean world for writing or painting and also for making articles such as rope. So, simply put, papyrus is basically just a sheet on which the ancient Egyptians used to write, and this is our major source for how to interpret their history. Then there is scribe. Scribe is a term used for someone employed to make written copies of documents before printing was invented. So, scribes were those people who wrote this papyrus and also other things. Scribe is a term which is commonly used in history all over the world. So, ancient Egypt was an autocratic society ruled by a line of pharaohs who were thought to be divine. Egyptian, a Semitic language, was written in two forms, hieroglyphic and hieratic. A very small group of professional scribes could read and write. The only evidence we have for mathematics in ancient Egypt come from scribal tradition. So, as we studied, scribe writers were those people who were employed to write and document these documents. The study of mathematics was a key component of scribes' education. This is why the documents of ancient mathematics have survived for so long, because they were well documented by scribes. This given figure shows an ancient Egyptian scribe. So this is the Egyptian number system. These numerals were used in ancient Egypt. Now let us look at the culture of mathematics in Mesopotamia. So thousands of clay tablets containing Sumerian and Assyrian written in cuneiform were found. All of these materials are scattered around in a number of different library collections, poses many difficulties and to scholars to involve many problems of interpretation. These texts are written in dead languages. Again, since these texts are written in dead languages and cuneiforms, and they have been spread across the world, it offers many difficulties in interpretation of these texts. So this is an evidence of Mesopotamian number system. As you can see, this is a rock in which the numbers have been scribbled. This must be only a small fraction of what was once produced, so it is possible that our knowledge of Egyptian mathematics is skewed by the lack of evidence. Egyptian number system. Egyptian number system was a decimal number system. This means that the base of the Egyptian number system was 10. This was not a place value system. Every mark had an absolute value. Before moving further, let us understand what place value actually means. So, our number system is a place value system because if we use the number 145, the value of 4 in this number is not 4 but 40. The value of 4 depends on where we actually put the digit. It is usually never equal to 4 unless it is used in one's place. So this is what is called a place value system. So these are further elaborations on Egyptian number system. The Egyptians only used to write unit fractions, what we write 1 by n. The ancient Egyptians only used those fractions of which the numerator was 1. They wrote symbol with a mark above it and had special symbols for special fractions like 1 by 2, 1 by 3, 1 by 4 and 2 by 3. Doubling an even numbered fraction was very simple. For example, we see that 1 by 10 plus 1 by 10 is equal to 1 by 5. However, doubling an odd numbered fraction is not very straightforward. This is because when you double an even numbered fraction, first of all, what even numbered fraction means? It actually has no meaning, it's not even a word, but in this context, we can interpret an even numbered fraction as 1 of which the numerator is 1 and denominator is an even number. So when we double an even numbered fraction, say 1 by 10 times 2, it becomes 1 by 5. This does not pose a problem to us because 5 is still an integer and it can be represented as a unit fraction. But here is what happens when we double an odd numbered fraction. For example, 1 by 5 multiplied by 2 is equal to 2 by 5. But this posed a great problem for the Egyptians because they did not have any way of representing 2 by 5. Multiplication and division. The Egyptians carried out multiplication by a series of successive doublings and then additions as well as inversions. Division is an analogous process using halving and unit fractions. Now this diagram represents how Egyptians multiplied. So the numbers here to be multiplied as 67 times 89. So here is what they did. First of all, they multiplied 89 by 1. The result we get is 89. Then we multiply 89 by 2. The result we get is 178. Then you multiply 89 by 64. The result you get is 5696. When we add all three of these, that is 89 plus 178 plus 5696, the net sum is 5963. This is equal to 67 times 89. And this is quite obvious because 67 is equal to 1 plus 2 plus 64. So the Egyptians basically used the distributive property of multiplication over addition, where they represented 67 as 1 plus 2 plus 64, successively doubled 89, and then added the numbers required to find the multiplication. In this way also, they divided by using fractions instead of doubling, by using fractions of 2 instead of doubling. Now let us talk about the Babylonian number system. The Babylonian number system was a base 60 number system. As you can see, this is much more advanced than the modern number system, which has a base 10. It was a place value system, but the placeholder was used inconsistently. So this was also a place value system, like the modern number system and unlike the Egyptian number system. But there were no very well defined set of rules, and the placeholder was used very inconsistently. Also, there was no clear division between integral and fractional parts. This means that for the purposes of computation, it was a pure floating point system. Now, the very interesting part we come to is that Egyptians knew that a triangle of side length, which is in the ratio of 3 ratio 4 ratio 5, is a right angle triangle. But how did they know that? We do not know, but perhaps they used the cut and paste argument. So it is very difficult to understand how they actually knew it. But the best guess which mathematicians have given is that they use the cut and paste argument. As one can see in the figure is a clear demonstrator of a square plus b square gives c square. So since the two squares are obviously the same size, the red plus yellow square must be equal to the white square. However, this is not a valid proof. Now, did the mathematics that the Egyptians used or the one that the Babylonians used was pure mathematics or applied mathematics? Mesopotamian scribes developed methods for solving many problems that had no immediate practical application. We all know that mathematics developed as a necessity. It started because people required mathematics to count the number of cattle they had or to measure the area of their field. But we can see that even in the Mesopotamian culture, mathematics was no longer simply applied, it also traveled into the pure direction, as the scribes had developed methods for solving problems that did not have a practical application then. So they were just venturing into pure mathematics. Mathematical problem solving appears to have become a mark of distinction in the scribal profession. As discussed earlier, the scribal profession people were required to know the rules of mathematics, and this became kind of a challenge to them, and then they dwelled further into problem solving. So mathematical problem solving was a mark of distinction in that profession. The better you were at problem solving, the better scriber you were considered. One major area of application, however, was the development of mathematical astronomy, which was used to predict significant events of the heavenly body. So, even though the mathematics was used for pure purposes, still the pure mathematics field was also very helpful and, in fact, very crucial for mathematical astronomy. In these ways, the production and teaching of mathematics had a well-defined place in Mesopotamia culture. Now, number systems. First of all, what is a number system? A number system, simply put, is a system to represent or express numbers. There are various types of number systems, and the most commonly one used ones are decimal number system, binary number system, octal number system, and hexadecimal number system. So these are the various types of number systems in mathematics. The four most common number systems are decimal number system of base 10. This is obviously the number system which we use in our daily life, and this has been widely adopted everywhere. Binary number system of base 2. Binary number system is the one which the computer uses for performing complex calculations. In fact, the entire language of computers is based on binary number system. Octal number system is a number system of base 8, and hexadecimal number system is number system of base 16. Hexadecimal number system is also very helpful for studying binary numbers. Why exactly do we need a number system? Thousands of years ago, there was no need of numbers. So instead, people used fingers, rocks, sticks, or eyes to represent numbers. At that time, there was not even a requirement of numbers, so the society was going well. There were neither clocks nor calendars to help keep of track of time. The sun and the moon were used to distinguish between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. So obviously the clock is based on on our mathematical system, and at that time it was impossible to distinguish between 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. because there were no clocks. There was a little need for numeric system. However, this was all before the development of society. After this, when the group of people started forming clans, villages, and settlements, they began a system of bartering and a trade that in turn created a demand for currency. So, as people started setting up societies, as they started getting into groups, they started trading stuff and started a system of barter which demanded a need for numbers. As we can see, the early development of mathematics was solely based on the demand of the people. The, it was the people who required the demand of currency for which a well structured number system had to be developed. There was the Babylonian number system. The Babylonians had a very advanced number system, even for today's standards. It was a base 60 system. Now, this is very large as compared to our base 10 system, also very advanced. The Babylonians also divided the day into 24 hours, and each hour into 60 minutes, and each minute into 60 seconds. This form of timekeeping is what we follow today. Even in today's life, we divide a day in 24 hours and each hour in 60 minutes, each minute in 60 seconds. So apparently, this form of timekeeping has survived for 4,000 years. This is why the Babylonians are also known as the timekeepers of modern society. The Babylonian number system, like most other number systems, began with tally marks. The Babylonians developed a form of writing based on cuneiforms. So as you can see, the diagram represents the Babylonian number system. Sorry. Now let us talk about other number systems. The Chinese had one of the oldest number system. They were based on the representation of sticks laid on a table to represent calculations. The Roman numerical system, which we all have studied in schools, the Roman numeral system, which is still used today, had even after its symbol changed from time to time. Today, Roman numerals are used to represent numerical chapters of books or for the main divisions of outlines. There was also the Hindu-Arabic number system, which will be discussed later in this presentation. As this is the Chinese number system. As mentioned earlier, it can be seen as sticks being laid on a table to represent numbers. These are the Roman numerals which we have all obviously studied earlier. Then arithmetic and geometry. The Sumerians in southern Mesopotamia, which is a part of modern day Iraq, developed a written language in about 3000 BC. This was the same time that they developed the first school in mathematics. People understood geometry and algebra by 2000 BC, by which time Sumer had become a part of Babylon. This was the time around which the Babylonians and the ancient Egyptians were aware of the number pi, and it being the ratio of circle's circumference to its diameter. In this, so around 2000 BC and 3000 BC, we can see the gradual shift of mathematics from algebra and number system to geometry. And the thing is that this was not a forced shift. So geometry and algebra are connected in so many ways that arithmetic and algebra are uh, related in so many ways that we can see a shift in 2000 BC from geometry to algebra to from arithmetic to algebra. Sorry. Now this statement says that if a straight line falling on two straight lines makes the interior angles on the same side less than the two right angles, the two straight lines, if produced indefinitely, meet on that side on which the angles are less than the two right angles. So this statement is very easy. This is a very simple statement, and yet this postulate was one of the biggest statements in the foundation of ancient mathematics. This was given by the great mathematician Euclid. Euclid was among the first people who studied geometry and arithmetic and their interconnection. Euclid was known as the father of geometry. Ptolemy once asked Euclid if there was no shorter route to geometry, to which Euclid replied that there is no royal route to geometry. So the given picture is that of Euclid. These are Euclid's five postulates. Given 2 points, there is one straight line that joins them. A straight line segment can be prolonged indefinitely. A circle can be constructed when a point for its center and a distance for its radius are given. All right angles are equal. If a straight line falling on two straight lines makes the interior angle on the same side less than two right angles, the two straight lines, if produced indefinitely, meet on the side on which the angles are less than two right angles. So these statements are the basic foundations of mathematics, and even though they may sound very easy and very basic in modern life, they were considered a big thing when the understanding of geometry was very low. The practical need for counting, elementary measurements, and calculations became the reason for emergence of arithmetic. The first authentic data on arithmetic knowledge can be found in the historical monuments of Babylon and ancient Egypt in the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC. The big contribution to the development of arithmetic was made by ancient Greek mathematicians, in particular Pythagoreans, who tried to define the entire world in terms of numbers. Now let us look at Hindu and Arabic mathematical culture. The Hindu and Arabic system. The Hindu-Arabic system is designed for positional notation in decimal value. This, as we discussed, is the place value system. This system has been widely adopted in the West. The given picture shows how the symbols have changed from time to time. The first column shows how the symbols were written in Brahmi, then Hindu script, then the Arabic script, that is where they traveled from India, then in the medieval Europe, and this is the modern Europe. This is the modern Europe representation. So, as we can see, there was a gradual change in the symbols of these numbers, but the idea has remained same. And the great thing about this system was the place value system. So let us look at the origin of this. The Hindu number system, as we know it today, for it is more or less the one we use today as well, can be attributed to two men, the great Hindu astronomer Aryabhatta and his pupil Bhaskara I. Aryabhatta invented a system that was based on using syllables and combining them to form greater numbers. Bhaskara I simplified the system somewhat and made it a decimal place value system. The Hindus had used the decimal system for a long time and even had zero before this time, but it was not until these two astronomers came up with a system for forming numbers that system was more or less complete. So even though zero had existed before Aryabhatta and Bhaskara, one, but but these two mathematician come astronomers were the ones who came up with a well defined and a very systematic method for representation of numbers, which is same as the one we use today. So how it spread across the world. The zero was very important in the development of Hindu number system as it allowed for introduction of place value system. This made calculations much simpler than any previous system could have provided. The zero, however, later reached the Arabs, who were not very fond of it. Even the great Al-Khwarizmi, who has given name to the word algorithm, considered there to be only 9 numerals, even though he made use of zero. Adoption in the West. In Christian Europe, the first mention and representation of Hindu Arabic numerals is in Codex Vigilanus, written in 976 by three monks from Ryogen Monastery. This was followed by the widespread use of Hindu Arabic numeral system across the West. So this is how the number system started from India. With this slide, it is shown that Aryabhatta and his pupil Bhaskara I made a systematic number system. It traveled to Arab then, and later it was adopted in Europe, and now it's used in the entire world. This is the system in which we grew up. So now let us talk about the ancient Indian mathematicians who have contributed to mathematics. The first name which comes to everyone's mind is that of Aryabhatta. Aryabhatta was the author of several treatises on mathematics and astronomy. So Aryabhatta was not only a mathematician but also an astronomer. His major work, Aryabhatiya, was extensively referred to in the Indian mathematical literature and has survived to modern times. The mathematical part of Aryabhatiya covers arithmetic, algebra, plane trigonometry, and spherical trigonometry. It also contains continued fractions, quadratic equations, sum of power series, and table of signs. This is a picture of the great Indian mathematician Aryabhatta. This is Brahmagupta I. Brahmagupta. In the year 628, at the age of 30, he composed the Brahmaputra Siddhant, the improved treatise of Brahma. So a good deal of this is astronomy, but this book also contains key chapters on mathematics, including algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and algorithm. This is a picture of Brahmagupta. Then Bhaskara I. So as we can see in the picture, this is an approximation of sin x. The picture shows that sin x degree is equal to 4x times 180 minus x divided by 40,500 minus x times 180 minus x. This is of course an approximation. This approximation was given by Bhaskara 1. So Bhaskara 1 sign approximation is a rational expression in which one variable for computation of the approximate values of trigonometric series. This was discovered by Bhaskara 1, a 7th century Indian mathematician. Now let us look at the invention of negative numbers and zero. In 200 BC, the Chinese number rod system represented numbers in red and negative numbers in black. They were used for commercial and tax calculations. So the need of negative numbers arose from calculating money. The amount sold was considered to be positive and the amount spent was considered to be negative. A money balance was positive and a deficit was negative. Now let us look at this poem. A debt minus zero is a debt. A fortune minus zero is a fortune. Zero minus zero is a zero. A debt subtracted from zero is a fortune. A fortune subtracted from zero is a debt. The product of zero with any debt or fortune is zero. The product of zero with zero is zero. The product or quotient of two fortunes is a fortune. The product or quotient of two debts is one fortune. The product or quotient of a debt or a fortune, or of a fortune or a debt, is a debt. This poem was written by the great Indian mathematician Brahmagupta. The negative numbers did not appear until 620 CE in the works of Brahmagupta, who used the idea of fortune and debts for positive and negative. This also shows that these uh, these numbers originated from applied mathematics, means their need arose only when people started thinking about fortunes and debts. By this time, a system based on place value had been established in India, with zero being used in Indian number system. Pingala, an Indian scholar, used binary numbers and was the first one to represent shunya for zero. Pingala was the first one to represent shunya, but as we saw earlier, Brahmagupta and Aryabhat were the one who put a proper system for development of zero and properly defined zero. Now let us look at the history of algebra. The origin of algebra can be traced to the ancient Babylonians, who developed a positional number system that greatly aided them in solving their rhetorical algebraic equations. The Babylonians were not interested in exact solutions but approximations, and they would commonly use linear extrapolation to approximate intermediate values. The geometric work of Greek typified in Euclid's Elements. So Elements was a book written by Euclid. This provided the framework for generalizing formula beyond the solution of particular problems in more general systems for stating and solving equations. So even though Euclid was a great mathematician, but he was very famous for his explanations, which we can even see in his postulates and axioms and definitions. Euclid is known as the father of geometry, but he also had a great role in algebra, where his work can be used for generalizing a formula for solutions beyond particular problems. The Greeks created geometric algebra, where the terms were represented by the sides of geometric objects, usually lines, that had letters associated with them. With this new form of algebra, they were able to find solutions to equations by using processes they had invented, known as applications of areas. In this, we see the intermingling of geometry and algebra. So, they used geometry to solve algebra. A conic section. Now, conic section is a part of geometry and algebra both. A conic section, simply defined, is a curve that represents from the intersection of a cone with a plane. These are primarily of three types: ellipses, and ellipses do include circles, parabolas, and hyperbola. The conic sections are said to be discovered by Menaechmus. These conic sections can, in modern world, also be represented by algebraic equations, and in 12th standard we have solved conic equations by using algebraic equations only. So this is how geometry has ventured into algebra and algebra has ventured into geometry. Now let us look at algebra in India. So this is a quote written in Sanskrit, and it was written by none other than Aryabhat. So here is what that quote states: to determine two quantities from their difference and product, multiply the product by 4, then add the square of the difference and then take the square root. Write this result down in two slots. Increase the first slot by the difference and decrease the second by the difference. Cut each slot in half to obtain the values of the two quantities. This will sound very complex, but to put in simpler terms, this is what he's saying. If x minus y is equal to a and x times y is equal to b, then x and y can be written as the following: x is equal to square root of a square plus 4b plus a by 2, and y is equal to square root of a square plus 4b minus a by 2. And this is very easy because we can easily solve this by quadratic formula. Now the roots of an equation. Roots in mathematics. So what exactly does root mean? Roots in mathematics, a solution to an equation, usually expressed as a number or an algebraic formula. So root of an equation is a solution of an equation, and this may be expressed as a number or as an algebraic formula. Now there is another poem in this one. Through art algebraic, the stone tells how old God gave him boyhood, 1/6 of his life, 1/12 more as youth while whiskers grew rife, and then yet 1/7 ere marriage began. In 5 years there came a bouncing new son, Alice the dear child of master and sage after attaining half the measure of his father's life. Chill fate took him. After consoling his fate by the signs of numbers for 4 years, he ended his life. Now this poem can be represented in algebraic manner as this: L being the life of the writer, 1/6 of L plus 1/12 of L plus 1/7 of L plus 5 plus half of L plus 4 times L is equal plus 4 is equal to L. This gives us L is equal to 84. That is, the age of the poet is 84. Now can you guess who the poet is? The poet is none other than Diophantus. Diophantus was the first Greek mathematician who recognized fractions as numbers. Thus, he allowed positive rational numbers for the coefficients and solutions. In modern use, Diophantine equations are usually algebraic equations with integral coefficients, of which integral solutions are sought. Diophantus is also sometimes known as the father of algebra, and as said, in modern use, Diophantine equations refer to those algebraic solutions which have integral coefficients, and integral solutions of which are to be found. The Indian mathematician Brahmagupta explicitly described uh, the quadratic formula written in words instead of symbols. His solution of the quadratic equation was as follows: to the absolute number multiplied by 4 times the coefficient of square, add the square of the coefficient of the middle term, the square root of the same, less the coefficient of the middle term, being divided by twice the coefficient of the square is the value. Now this giant quote can simply be written as x is equal to minus b plus minus square root of b square minus 4ac by 2a, which is the solution to a quadratic equation which can be represented by ax square plus bx plus c. This was independently given by many mathematicians, but one of the first ones recognized was by Brahmagupta. So India has also been accredited for the discovery of quadratic formula. Archimedes devised geometric methods for calculating square roots using circles with circumscribed hexagons. So this was another way. Archimedes is usually known as a physicist, and he has had great achievements in the field of physics. For example, he is most commonly known for the discovery of buoyant force, but also he he is known for preparing very many war machines by the use of very simple machines like lever and pulley. And in this one, this one shows the mathematician side of Archimedes, in which he devised a geometric method for the calculation of square roots using circles with circumscribed hexagons. Now, Muhammad ibn Muasso al-Khwarizmi, as discussed earlier, al-Khwarizmi is known as the father of is known as the father of algebra, and al-Khwarizmi is the name behind the word algorithm. The word algorithm has been defined from his name, and he has had major contributions to mathematics. So this is how he solved quadratic equations. So as I said earlier, quadratic formula was discovered by many mathematicians simultaneously. The one of the first ones of them being Brahmagupta, and also this Muhammad ibn Muso al-Khwarizmi. So here is what he said on solving linear equations. He had a peculiar algorithm of solving them, and the method of solving them first required solving the quadratic equation to reducing them into one of the six standard forms in which he knew how to solve it. So the standard forms are ax square is equal to bx, ax square is equal to c, bx is equal to c, ax square plus bx equals c, ax square plus c equals bx, bx plus c equals ax square. This is when b and c are positive integers, and the quad this is when b and c are positive integers. So Khwarizmi had an algorithm in which once you reduce the equation to this form, he could solve it further. So that was my presentation. These are the references which I used. Thank you for watching.